And we are live. Welcome to the Signal 50 podcast for Wednesday, July 7th, 2021, with our new co host, Kilo Romeo 522. Kilo, welcome to the program. You've got some pretty sizable shoes to fill from Bravo and his departure, unfortunately. So, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Alpha. Glad to be here.
We're glad to hear. So, in case anybody missed the last program when we had Kilo on, we had some technical issues on Sunday night, so we do apologize for that. We brought Kilo back as a host, a co-host, because Bravo has to. He's done with the podcast, unfortunately. So we're welcoming Kilo. This is not an easy thing to do by any stretch of the imagination, and it's a little bit difficult. So we're gonna give him a break. But we have a bunch of things that we want to talk about tonight, and Kilo brings a wealth of worldly experience with him, a different perspective on the world, and he's a well-traveled man. Without saying too much, let's just say he's pretty well-rounded, and he's more than capable of keeping track of current events. So tonight, without further ado, we're going to talk a little bit about Governor Cuomo and some of the Second Amendment issues that are going on in the state of New York and Cuomo's new war on gun violence, apparently. So we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about a U.S. Olympian. Her name is Gwen Berry, in case anybody hadn't noticed. She's the one who, just made a buffoon out of herself. And we're going to talk a little bit about something that happened with the Fire Department of New York and the ticker tape parade that was down there, thrown by de Blasio in the city for some of the first responders down there. We'll talk a little bit about what happened there. As a lot of you know, we've been involved in Afghanistan for roughly 20 years, which is 10 years longer than the Russians. And we're about 90% of the way pulled out of there at this point. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that, some of the consequences of what might go on there. And there's another story. We like to bring an economic story to you every episode to talk a little bit about the economy, what we see coming, and some of the things that not a lot of people are talking about that you really should be aware of. We have an unfunded pension liability problem in this country, and we'll be getting a little bit into that. So, first, a little housekeeping. Generally speaking, we're going to be doing our shows on Wednesday and we're going to do Sunday. Generally speaking, we do about 9 o'clock Eastern time. You can catch us on YouTube. The link has been provided. You can catch us on Rumble later on in the evening when we upload it to Rumble and all your favorite podcast outlets. And thank you very much. We have some sponsorship changes that are going to be coming really soon to the Signal 50 podcast. We were actually able to pick up some sponsors. So that's really good. And our circulation is really, really growing. So thanks a lot for listening to us and trusting us with an hour of your time tonight. And on Sunday nights. Thank you very, very much. The audience has grown by leaps and bounds, and there's some special things that are going to be happening here really soon. So we'll keep you informed on that. So without further ado, let's get into the news that we want to talk about this evening. And let's start off with something that Kilo wanted to talk about, which is his favorite governor, Governor Cuomo. So, Kilo, why don't you go ahead and let's talk a little bit about what's happening with this buffoon.
Well, I think Governor Cuomo is taking a page out of his good friend Rahm Emanuel's book and not letting a good crisis go to waste. That seems to be the mantra of folks that share his mindset. And now we've declared a war on gun violence. Apparently we didn't mishandle the nursing home issue in New York State and kill enough senior citizens. And so now we have to course correct for the mistake that we made when, we let dangerous criminals out on the street in the name and spirit of bail reform. That's the euphemism we use here in the Empire State, bail reform, because, the process that worked fairly well for many, many years, apparently we had to change that for change's sake. So now we've got people who should be locked up, no longer locked up, running around with weapons, firearms that they were obtained illegally,
Oh, what do you mean they don't have permits for these guns that they have?
No, Alpha, I think it's a pretty safe bet that they don't, because they're all cited on weapons charges when they're arrested again. So this is a fellow who is absolutely positively in love with power. The state legislature, who the vast majority of whom are from his political party, stripped him of his emergency powers because he's so out of control. And so apparently we don't have enough to do, aside from road work all over the place now. We don't have enough to worry about there with respect to infrastructure. So, now we have to go after the guns again. And the governor just doesn't learn. And the folks on that side of the aisle from that mindset just don't learn. All of us who go ahead. I'm sorry.
So what's their plan?
Oh, it's just one more way that we're setting up councils and focus groups to figure out ways to take firearms legally obtained and purchased and required licenses and permits, what have you, obtained by law-abiding citizens. We're going to take those away from the law-abiding citizens. And, this is going to solve the problem with gun violence, because, it's the law-abiding citizens that are causing all of these problems. It is absolute insanity.
Well, what I find very, very interesting is the state of New York has got some of the most restrictive handgun laws and semi-automatic sporting rifle laws in the country. Aside from, like, let's say Massachusetts, Connecticut is pretty tough, but not quite as bad, and New Jersey is really rough. But I think New York takes the cake, right?
Oh, you're not kidding.
And you compare that with a place like, let's say, West Virginia. Okay. Now, West Virginia has got constitutional carry. If you are over the age of 21 and not a prohibited person, whether you're a resident of the state of West Virginia or not, when you enter the state, you can carry a handgun. No problem. Mississippi, and there's a growing number of states with constitutional carry, even Texas. Florida is heading that way. They have a permit system in Florida. You can carry a gun in your car in Florida without a permit, and some of their gun laws are pretty lax. It seems to me that these states with the responsible citizens carrying firearms have far less problems. I mean, can anybody explain that to me?
Well, apparently Governor Cuomo can here. I'm going to quote right from the New York Post article today. We're going to be in much better shape when he's done, because he's unveiling a 7-point plan that includes treating gun violence as an emergency public health issue, using data and science to zero in on shooting hotspots. So apparently the states like West Virginia and Florida and Texas, they haven't gotten the memo to use all this science. Apparently the lack of science is what the problem is, Alpha.
Well, maybe they just need a 7-point plan.
Right. I didn't see any of the rest of the points in this article, but it just doesn't stop. The gun grabbers just do not stop. And I think it is absolutely amazing that people who sit in his administration, who make lots of money, and the ones at the top make lots of money, are advising him that this is a good idea. You make a problem with bail reform that lets people who shouldn't be out of jail run all over the streets, wreak all kinds of havoc, and then you want to take the ability for people who follow the law and go to work and pay taxes and live decent lives to defend themselves. Because running parallel with this, let's not forget, we want to cut down on the police. We don't need these police anymore. These police are intrinsically flawed. We don't need as many. We don't need them.
Right.
So the police can't protect you. You can't protect yourself. I guess you just give up your throat. I just shake my head. I don't know what else to do.
I don't understand either. I don't understand the logic behind it. I've never understood the logic of it. I lived in New York for many, many, many years, and I had a carry permit. And I had a carry permit for many, many years. like many, many years. The minute I turned 21 years old, I applied for my pistol permit. 4 months later and several $100s later, by the time I was done, I had my carry permit. Now, it's just an amazing array of hoops and loops and barrel rolls you have to go through in the state of New York to legally own a firearm. And when you take it seriously, it's just ridiculous that they have such a huge problem. You'd think with all of these laws, everybody would behave themselves, right?
Well, you would think, yes.
Apparently, that doesn't work.
No.
I think the very definition of a criminal is somebody who doesn't follow the laws or norms, right? So
also true.
I just don't know what to tell you. I moved to a place where the gun laws were incredibly permissive. When I first moved there, I was just stunned at how easy it was to go get a handgun. All you had to do was show them your driver's license. You were done. Mm-hmm. A carry permit was go down to the sheriff's department, pay them their little fee. They run a quick background check on you. Done. Bob's your uncle. You got a gun. You're cool. Couldn't believe it.
Not here. No. This I mean, I had left the state when I was 22 years old, and Andrew Cuomo's father was governor. And I didn't think it could get much worse, but boy, oh boy. And the fact that this gentleman gets the passes that he has gotten repeatedly, because this is in the middle of several female staffers saying that, there were issues with him being a little touchy-feely and inappropriate.
Right.
That got swept under the carpet. And even back when he used to manage his father's political campaigns, some of the awful, hateful things he had said against the other mayoral candidates of New York City. The man who was a homosexual, and the way that, the Cuomo political machine went after him. And, you don't hear anything about that in the mainstream media either. So
no, you certainly don't hear any of that in the mainstream media. I mean, look, you've got, he's untouchable essentially, and nobody is going to put a check on his power. And it's just ridiculous. Let's talk a little bit about, some of the draconian measures that the state of New York has gone through in the name of protecting people from gun violence. The SAFE Act, to name one thing, right?
Oh, that's right. You don't need any more than 10 bullets in any of your guns. 10 bullets. So hope you're a good shot.
Exactly. Yep. That's just utterly ridiculous.
And if 10 bullets is too much, follow your president, your commander-in-chief's advice, and just get a shotgun. That's all you need.
Hey, well, that's the
single shot 410.
Single shot. Well, a shotgun would be the first thing I'd grab for in the middle of the night anyway. So, okay. So he's not so wrong there. I'm okay with that one. But, it's just absolutely absurd. The restrictions on the constitutional rights that the Supreme Court has upheld time and time and time again. It's ridiculous. The people of the state of New York, everything from Westchester down, just cut it off the state, set it adrift, and upstate would be just much better off without them.
Well, it is so crazy here for folks who are listening around the nation and around the world. It is so crazy here. If you move from county to county, by rights, you're supposed to apply for a new pistol permit.
That's right.
And anything south of Poughkeepsie,
forget it.
Leave your guns at home. You have to write a letter basically to the chief constable, either chief of police or this, the sheriff in charge of the county, and you have to explain, why you feel you have to carry a firearm concealed, and they can say no for whatever reason.
Well, back in the day, I mean, this whole reason to carry and what did they call it? A possession permit or a home permit only to and from the range, and you can carry on your own property instead of a full carry permit. That nonsense started in the mid to late 90s, as I recall.
Yes.
In the state of New York. And I always had a full carry. and I'm not ashamed to say it. The reason I had a full carry permit was I was friends with the judge.
Well, it's just sad that it had to come to that.
You know what?
The fact that you're an upstanding citizen, you have no criminal record, you pay your taxes, people in the community look up to you.
Yep.
And you have the right protected by this, little document that's I'm told is living and breathing, called the United States Constitution. It's sad that the only way that you could exercise that right is to have a friend who was on the bench.
Pretty sad, right?
Yes,
Terrible.
sir.
Just
Yes, sir.
absolutely terrible. And I'm not ashamed to admit it. It was a corrupt way of doing things. It was very corrupt. It was currying favor with the magistrate to buy your rights back from the state. And if I wasn't friends with the magistrate or the judge in this case, I would have never been able to have a full carry permit. And that's just a shame of it. There are people that didn't have any access to these people who just wound up not being able to have a carry permit. So it's just really a corrupt system. It's bad. I'm guilty of it. I committed the mortal sin of knowing a certain judge who's no longer with us, and I used to play golf with the guy. So it was like he called me on the phone. He says, "Your permit renewal paperwork is in front of me. You're all set." He called me on the phone.
There you go.
He's like, I signed it. Go to the sheriff's department, go pick up your new paperwork. You're good to go. When I had to renew. It's just crazy. But anyhow, listen, we can go on and on and on about this for hours. I live in a blue state now. It's bad as hell. It's just nowhere near as bad as New York. At least we can still have AR-15s as long as there are certain conditions. And it's all nonsensical and arbitrary. And gun violence here is absolutely astronomically out of control. Remember, unfortunately, I live in the state where we have to claim Baltimore.
Well, there you go. And you see so many things in common. You see so many things in common. Every one of these states where they start cracking down on guns, crime is out of control.
Oh, right.
And nobody, again, the advisors, these brilliant people who are supposed to be advising these equally brilliant politicians, nobody can seem to figure out that, the best deterrent for the bad person that wants to break into somebody's house and do them harm is to have to think about, I could lose my life doing this.
Is that big screen TV behind that door really worth me losing a part of my body that I care about?
That's right.
And the answer is most certainly no. Contrarily, am I going to shoot somebody over a big screen TV? Nope. That's what insurance is for. But if you break into my house in the middle of the night, it's not about a big screen TV anymore.
Nope.
Anyhow, so moving along, hey,
Yes.
Listen, we could sit here and talk about that all night long. We got the Olympics coming up, and I used to just absolutely, when I was a kid, when the Olympics were on, we used to sit in front of the idiot box. We used to sit there and just absolutely were glued to the screen, just absolutely glued.
Winter or summer. I mean,
both.
I remember being 9 years old watching the Olympic team beat the Soviet Army. And I remember how happy I was when they put the dream team together, because I used to get so upset when our college athletes would lose to the professionals from around the world. And it's just amazing how different things are now, at least for me, when I watch the Olympics.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, when I was a kid, I can remember watching the 1980 Winter Olympic Games on a 13-inch black and white TV. I watched our guys beat the Soviets and then beat Finland for the gold medal. And we were on vacation. We were in Florida when we were kids, and that was on television. And you know what? We all huddled around a 13-inch black and white television at Grandma's house, and the world stopped turning. And the summer games, I remember when Bruce Jenner used to dress like a man, and I watched those Olympics as well. So yeah, they were very near and dear to me. It was one of my dreams to participate in the Winter Olympics. When I was a kid, I was a skier. I was a competitive skier. Not really great. I mean, I was pretty decent, but there were a lot of people that were better than me. And that was always kind of, when you were a kid, when you grew up in upstate New York, I mean, you skied.
Yes.
Because what the hell else was there to do in the wintertime, right?
Too young to drink. So, yeah, that's right.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, we went skiing and drinking at the same time.
I don't know. The next thing you know, there'll be revocation of statute of limitations on underage drinking. So I got to go on record saying I never did that.
I didn't do that. I
didn't think.
Nope.
Upstanding fellas that we are.
That's right. So, look, that was always the dream. So you got this gal named Gwen Berry, right? She's a track runner, or she hammer throw, right?
Hammer throw. That's correct.
Was hammer throw. I do apologize. And, she took the moment because she came in third place to absolutely take a squat on the American flag and to just completely disrespect the entire process and her teammates who did beat her. She stole the moment.
Oh, absolutely. And I again, today we can talk about Gwen Berry. But this again, just like the last topic, like so many of them that we could discuss, you all have discussed, I hope that we discuss in the future. These are symptoms of a much larger problem. Okay? What she doesn't seem to understand is that her sponsors were tax-paying citizens and corporate sponsors and folks who made random donations, because I'm pretty sure she didn't fund herself to get there. I'm sure it happens, but not very often.
Right.
And when you accept that sponsorship and you are on the team of the United States of America, what you represent is a heck of a lot more important than who you are.
That's right.
And these athletes don't seem to understand that. And the professionals, or the supposed professionals in our country, don't seem to understand that you live in the greatest nation in the world. Do we have problems and faults and failings? You bet. But if you look at our history, we have spent the better part of our history. The overwhelming majority of our population tries to improve itself daily.
That's right.
And
that's right.
Whatever your issues are, you show respect to that flag and what this country represents, even if it's less than perfect.
It's really funny. This gal, she's a black gal, Gwen Berry. It's not really about race, but I'm gonna say something that might be a little bit controversial, and I'm okay with it. It's really interesting that was the flag that ended slavery.
Exactly.
Huh. The same one that she decided to, basically crap on. What are you thinking? You are an Olympic athlete on the U.S. Olympic team. What did you think this was all about?
Yep. I don't know if it was more I'm a spoiled brat and I didn't win the event because clearly I'm the best in the world and, this was just a bad day. Or, again, citing the New York Post article on page 7, today's paper, apparently there were some tweets that have been taken down and nobody can view them anymore. Now, if it was somebody from a different political persuasion, those would have been archived and cast in bronze. And we'd be, that would be the stain of shame you would have to see in perpetuity. That whoever put those inappropriate tweets up would never be able to escape them.
Well, let me ask you a question. I did you see the picture of her wrapping herself in the American flag during the last Olympic event that she was taking part in?
No, sir, I did not see that.
Oh, that was a couple of years ago. What's changed between then and now, right?
That's a very, very profound question, Alpha.
What has changed? I mean, have we slid that far down the rabbit hole in the past couple of years? I don't think so.
Not in that regard, we haven't.
Not in that regard. I don't think so. If everybody wants to make everything about race, then we are taking a giant step backwards in our country from where our founding fathers wanted us to be at this point.
Well, and that's absolutely correct. And it takes the efforts of Dr. Martin Luther King, and kind of squats all over that too, where we're not looking at people based on the color of their skin, but rather on the content of their character. And I have to tell you, if Miss Berry's actions are indicative of her character, I, as an American, a citizen of the United States, am embarrassed that she was selected to represent me.
Correct. I completely concur with you, Kilo. It's a damn shame. There are so many people that would be dying to have that position. You got to remember, these competitions to down select these athletes are games of hundredths, thousandths of a second, inches, millimeters. Any given Sunday, somebody could have taken her place.
Absolutely.
Was she skillful in getting there? Yes, absolutely. Cannot take anything away from this woman and her athletic ability. But was there a good measure of luck in there that somebody else didn't have a little bit better day on the down select? Yeah, I think so. So you know what? Consider yourself lucky. Pull that crap in Saudi Arabia or some other third world dirt hole and watch what happens to you.
That's absolutely right. But her inappropriate and disgusting behavior will be rewarded. She'll probably get a book and a movie deal out of it, and everybody will hail her as a generational heroine.
Yeah.
But Gwen, just want you to know, not everybody feels that way. You shamed us. And
Gwen
more importantly, you shamed yourself.
Gwen Berry, you are a fraud. You're a fraud. Disgrace. I got news for you. Anybody going to Tokyo for these Olympics, if they pull any of this crap in Tokyo and they start disgracing flags or national anthems or anything like that, I have news for you. Or they play this BLM card or whatever activist cause that they want to play into. I have news for these people. The Japanese are not going to put up with this. They have laws in their country. They've come out and said, this is not going to wash here. If any athletes pull this crap in Tokyo, they're going to be arrested.
Oh, and folks don't understand. If I may, for a second, Alpha.
Sure.
The process of jurisprudence in Japan is significantly different than it is here in the United States. As a fellow who was privileged to lead sailors in a former career at a different time in my life when I was younger, stronger, faster, more debonair, handsome, and modest. If you had a sailor get arrested in Japan and miss ship's movement, there's no guarantee to a speedy trial. And it is not like in this country where you get 3 hots and a cot and commissary. If you don't have family, friends, or shipmates bringing you meals, there's a pretty good chance you're not going to eat today. So it's not a matter of over there of just, being disrespectful to somebody's, flag or nation or home where you come from. If you're charged with a crime over there, good luck, Gwen. Good luck. Or any other athlete that decides to act the fool.
Well, the Japanese gave everybody fair warning.
Absolutely.
Full stop. Don't pull this crap here. It's not going to work well for you.
Things are distinctly different in different parts of the world. I remember, we're going back now 25, maybe 30 years. I'm sure you remember this, Alpha. Do you remember the Americans that were over in Singapore and spit in public and violated that law and got caned?
Yes,
you remember that? Remember they wanted us to go to war over it because some insolent little brat couldn't respect the law and show good manners and not be spitting out in public. And he got cracked on the rear end with the cane, and we were supposed to feel sorry for him. I remember I wrote a letter to that government and said, minimum 10 strikes. He got smacked on the rear end one time. He should have gotten it more when he was a kid. Maybe his perspective might have been different.
Well, listen, I spend a lot of time overseas, okay? And I travel to foreign countries. And let me tell you something, that flag that you're spitting on, that affords you an awful lot of protection. in certain respects, especially when you're on Canis. That flag is your suit of armor here in the United States. And when we had a strong leader, that flag was a suit of armor around the world, because nobody's going to kidnap an American, because we don't negotiate, we don't pay ransoms, and if somebody has enough political swag, they're going to send SEAL Team 6 after your ass.
That's
somewhere
right.
somewhere in the world. And these terrorist pukes around the world, they understand that. They're not stupid. It's the same thing of it's mutually assured destruction. You screw with an American, and the American government is going to screw back.
To quote the great American philosopher Toby Keith, we'll put a boot in your ass. It's the American way.
Correct.
But, when we have a weak leader, and again, a weak supporting cast that advises this leader, it becomes a joke. And when we do things like our friend Gwen Berry did, it facilitates the fact that we're a joke. You can't expect anybody else to respect this country if the people that are representing it when the stage lights are on don't respect it.
100%. 100%. So, Gwen, may fortune forever be in your favor. Good luck with your 15 minutes of fame. In 6 months, nobody will remember you. And maybe sometime when we have real leadership in this country and people feel patriotism like they did before, you'll just be a footnote in history. So good luck to you, Gwen. Yep. Good luck to you and all your little cause heads. So, along those lines, there are some people in the world that are near and dear to my heart. For a number of reasons. Their extended family. I knew a lot of these guys. I worked with them when I was a firefighter in upstate New York. Vast amount of respects for them. Kilo, you've got a story here that you want to talk about a little bit. A little bit of something happened in a ticker tape parade for frontline workers in New York City.
Oh, my second favorite politician in New York State is Mayor Bill de Blasio.
You mean Wilhelm de Blasio?
Wilhelm, that's right. Wilhelm Werner. Your papers, please. But he didn't want that. He was ashamed enough of his family heritage that he had to take on, is it a nom de guerre or nom de plume? I'm not sure what it was. Anyway, he wanted to sound like he was an Italian, because Italians had a lot of stroke in New York City for a while. So he became I think he's the first fake Italian New York mayor. Anyway, he's made such a disaster of things down there.
Well, he's a fraud.
Right. And he's not going to go for re-election. So one of his last grandiose acts of charity and benevolence to the little people was to have a heroes parade in New York City. And it started in page 19 of today's New York Post. There's an open letter to Mayor Bill de Blasio signed by Benny Boscio Jr., the president of the Correction Officers Benevolent Association. And the New York City firefighters followed suit with President Boscio's letter and mindset. And, the letter today starts, I'm just going to quote a little piece of it here. I want all New Yorkers to know that because of the Department of Corrections' gross mismanagement and sheer negligence, far too many of our pandemic heroes are no longer with us. Over 1,700 correction officers contracted COVID-19, and tragically, 9 of them succumbed to this deadly disease. You read this letter, and the facts that are presented in it make your hair stand up. Second to last paragraph. Without PPE, our last line of defense was a strict testing regimen. In line with federal, state, and local protocol, we fought for frequent COVID testing for our members in order to keep both inmates and staff safe from infections. When the Department of Corrections was finally able to provide limited testing on Rikers, inmates, not correction officers, were the priority. And when correction officers tested positive for COVID, they were prohibited from using their sick leave benefits to safely quarantine. These women and men are putting their lives on the line. The police officers who arrest these criminals have guns, batons, handcuffs, tasers, sheer force and numbers to protect themselves. The correction officers on the tiers, they've got their wits, common sense, and ability to to be rational with people who have nothing to lose. And that is how they were treated. And so the New York City firefighters boycotted the ticker tape parade in solidarity with their union sisters and brothers. And God bless them for doing that, to have the backbone to stand up for it. What strikes me as really ironic is the unions usually tend to back the Democratic candidates, and once again, they got hung out to dry by the people that they helped get elected into office. So I salute the firefighters, and I salute the corrections officers and the police officers union who said, not enough, not today. The last short paragraph of what we found on page 19 is great. So no, we won't be in today's parade. You won't see us on your Twitter page. You sure as hell won't see us in a photo op. We will never forget the Department of Corrections' failure to keep New York's boldest safe, and neither should New York City. Amen, President Bosio. Truer words were seldom spoken.
Those guys that work in Rikers or Coxsackie or Auburn or any of the correctional facilities in the state of New York, not just, the New York City guys, right? That is a hell of a tough job.
Oh, boy.
Super, super dangerous job. You're locked up in there, not with people who might, you're not a police officer on the street. I would have to say that a police officer will encounter, I don't know, this is just a guess, 80% of the people that he deals with are just people having a tough day, or something has gone wrong. Generally speaking, their day went off the tracks and they have an interaction with police, a car accident, they did something stupid, whatever. These aren't career criminals that the cops get to deal with. On the rare occasion that they do, that can end badly too. I mean, that's a tough job all the way around, right? Think about it. You're a corrections officer with a fairly decent amount of training. You're completely unarmed, surrounded, locked in there with these creeps. You got baby rapers in there. You got murderers, people who've committed assault. You name it. You got the rabble of the world locked up in jail, awaiting trial, or that have been convicted, right? They're unarmed.
Amen.
These people have got balls the size of church bells.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And
they don't get enough recognition. They just don't get enough recognition.
To be hung out to dry the way that they have. And again, in my former profession as a United States naval officer, you were taught at a very young age that when you're in charge of it, whatever that is, if it's your first shop, a work center of 5 or 6 people, if it's a division of 24, if it's a command of 3,000, when it all goes right, it's because you're the next greatest hero since Douglas MacArthur. When it goes wrong, it's because you were in charge and you're accountable for it. And Mayor de Blasio has to be accountable for what happened in his city to his civil servants that he and his administration left hanging. Again, another disgrace. Thanks for nothing, Bill.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I don't understand how New York City keeps picking these winners. And after we just watched that election, the primary election down there, I'm not so sure people are picking, but that's another story for another day.
Yes, sir.
That's going to be an interesting topic. We're going to, on the next program, I think we're going to be able to get into that. I think there's going to be some more election news in the next couple of weeks coming out.
I think that's a safe bet.
I think so too. So, listen, we're talking about some national politics here and some national stories. And this is a national story, but it's more got an international ring to it, right? Everybody knows we've been in a state of conflict in Afghanistan for the better part of 20 years. The Russians played in Afghanistan for 10 years. They decided one day to pull the plug because our CIA started arming our allies who turned into the Taliban We have just such a great track record with our CIA and foreign policy of doing these things.
Christians in action.
Yes. We are our own worst enemy. So anyhow, it's time to leave Afghanistan. So at this point, as of today, without any real plan, organization, or forethought, we have withdrawn more than 90% of our personnel and equipment from Afghanistan. We're retrograding back. We're doing it at such a clip that Bagram Air Force Base was like abandoned. And the commander was like, what happened? Where'd everybody go? Does anybody understand the consequences of what's about to happen here? I'm not saying that we belong there. I'm not saying that we should stay. I'm just saying we should probably put a little bit more thought into this. What do you think there, Kilo?
Well, I think in life, Alpha, consistency is the key to success. And the good news is, if past performance is indicative of future trends, President Biden and his administration is consistent. Now, the fact that it's consistently bad will never get reported by the people who should report it. But by doing things that the way that they were done with this withdrawal, the only thing, or I should say the top thing that's going to happen, is those Afghanis who were loyal to us, our interpreters, our local drivers, those that were on the supply run helping with the logistics chain. Their death warrants are signed, as are the death warrants for their family members. The same thing happened to us in Iraq. The people who tried to make the nation better and took us at our word and helped us got left behind, and almost to a fate worse than death. And anybody who doesn't believe that, find an honest media outlet who did reports on the Kurds and tell me how they're making out these days.
Not so good.
And that is exactly what we're going to see here.
Yeah, we did the same thing in Vietnam. Look what happened to the Hmong people. Not a lot of people, listen, my generation, a lot of our teachers were Vietnam vets, and they didn't really like to talk about their experiences in Vietnam because reasons, right? This was the mid to early 80s. The wounds were still fresh. A lot of these guys came back 70, 71, 72. So they had, about 12 or 13 years back from Vietnam, and they weren't really talking about it. And when I went to school, it really wasn't part of the curriculum. We weren't really taught about the Vietnam War, which was a shame. So everything you learned about the Vietnam War, you had to learn for yourself. I had the fortune of living in a place called Minnesota. Now, you wouldn't associate Minnesota with any kind of activity about Vietnam War, except for one thing. The mountain people of Cambodia, the hill people, they were called the Hmong. They fought on our side in the Vietnam War. Now, the North Vietnamese army and the communists over there got their hands on a lot of these people after we skedaddled out of Vietnam, and they started slaughtering them, wholesale fashion. And a group of missionaries went over there. They rounded up the Hmong, and they brought them to the United States. Great people. Truly courageous people that helped and fought on our side. We abandoned people. We're abandoning these Afghan interpreters. You talk to any of these guys that are, in their 30s now, they fought a couple of tours, a lot of special forces guys, and the Afghanis that fought with them were just as brave as they were, fought just as hard. They risked more than the Americans because their families were in danger. We've just abandoned all of them. That's disgusting. I can't believe that we're behaving this way. Apparently, some of these folks are going to be brought to Guam. What the hell are they going to do in Guam?
Well, again, I come back alpha to consistency, and the consistent theme for the topics that we talked about, be it local, national, or international level. The word of the day, boys and girls, is disgrace.
It's unbelievable. I mean, listen, let's just face it, and this is painful to say. Whenever we get into a conflict anywhere in the world, we draw in the locals and we find people that are friendly to us and we treat them, accordingly, and we use them, being the operative word, use. And then we abandon them. Now, people around the world are relatively bright, right?
Yes.
Why would anybody ever want to be on our side if we just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again to the people that try to help us? Why? Think about that one for a minute. We're creating enemies everywhere because nobody wants to be on our side, because helping us is a death sentence for these people, because we're going to leave.
Blowback. If that's our terminal objective, we're doing one hell of a job.
And that's exactly how the war on terror started. We abandoned the people that we helped defeat the Soviets, and it turned into a catastrophe in Afghanistan, and it became a hotbed of opium trade and terror and training camps and a refuge for Al-Qaeda, et cetera, to gain in power and strength in a region and absolutely oppress the people. That there are decent people in Afghanistan. There are decent people everywhere. There are really bad people that came to power after we just abandoned those people. We created our own enemies. Osama bin Laden was our ally at one time. Am I not correct?
You're absolutely correct.
What happened? Did we abandon him? Yep.
Pretty good chance.
Yeah, well, there you go. So we're creating our own problem. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't know. So, that we can talk about that for hours. I mean, we got a lousy track record. The only time we did anything right, and a lot of credit has to be given, this pains me to say it. After World War II, we had two enemies. Well, actually three. The Italians, to an extent, were not so good either. We had the Japanese. We had the Germans. The Germans were really bad, and the Japanese were really bad. But at the end of the day, they realized that they were defeated, and they had enough honor to put their head down in shame and go into a period of deep self-reflection and to say, we were really, really bad. And they stopped their crap immediately, and they turned their countries around, and they became productive members of the world community. Correct?
Sure did. Sure did.
Hard to say it, but at least those enemies had a little bit of pride and shame. The Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, these people, we created them. They have no shame. They've got a long-term plan. They hate us. They want us dead. They're never going to stop. And now we just keep emboldening them by leaving. Not in favor of staying either. I don't have all the answers, but, anyhow. Moving along, and on some not so bright news. Generally speaking, what we do here is we mix it up with a lot of different stories. And one of the topics that we'd like to focus on from time to time are stories on the economy and how that impacts your economy sitting around the kitchen table at home. So something that nobody is talking about, we talked a little bit about in previous programs about, COVID and the effect of the shutdowns and job loss and the impacts on the economy and how much money the federal government is flowing into the economy for nothing. You're talking about rising inflation. We're talking about foreclosures. We're talking about repossessions, all of the bad stuff, right? And there's something that a lot of people count on when they get older. They work for it. They go to work for the state. Okay, let's face it, going to work for the United States government or state government or a locality, you're never going to get, well, unless you're a politician, you're never going to get rich. Okay. You're just you're a bureaucrat, right? And you're just pushing paper. You're trying to do the right thing. You're just assuming the good in all people, right? You're trying to do the right thing. You're working for a paycheck and you're working for a pension, right?
That's correct. You're what do they say in civil service? You're trading ambition for security.
Correct. So you do your 20 and it's like working for the military. And that's changed too. The military used to have a nice pension system. The military doesn't have a pension system anymore. As best I know it, they have a 401k system. Am I correct there, Kilo? I think.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
All right. So here's the deal. Pensions are this big pot of money, right, that the state contributes to, and it's a promise to pay X amount of dollars after you retire for so many years. Generally speaking, it's if it's state, county, or local, it's until the day you die for the most part. So you have a guaranteed income after retirement after you do X amount of years of service. And the amount of money you get in your pension is based on your last three, generally speaking, as a rule, your three highest earning years. That's what your pension is based out of. It's a percentage of your three highest years of pay. Overtime pay, bonus pay, et cetera, whatever, okay? What nobody's talking about, and we need to talk about, are the unfunded pension liabilities. Those are promises that have been made to people who fulfilled their obligations, played by those rules, and have an expectation in retirement of achieving a certain lifestyle or a certain grade of pay over their retirement years. Now, here's the problem. They're unfunded. Those unfunded liabilities from everybody that has retired, those unfunded liabilities are funded by people that are presently working and contributing to the pension system. It's like a revolving door. It's like it's a self-kicking dog, right? The guy behind you is the one paying your freight all the way through your retirement. Here's the problem. State, county, and local governments are all running in the red. They don't have the money to put back into the pension system. Those liabilities going forward are unfunded. Am I explaining this well?
I think you're doing an outstanding job.
It's a very complex topic to think about. It's like trying to lift yourself up. You're standing in a bucket and you're trying to lift yourself up by the handle. Okay? You can't do it. It's almost impossible. So overall, there's more than $900 billion in unfunded pension liabilities that have occurred in the last 2 years. Now, overall in this country of people that have retired from state, county, local governments, the unfunded pension liabilities are totaling $5.82 trillion. Where's that money going to come from?
Geez, Alpha, I mean, going based on what we've done with this whole stimulus mess, I thought we were just going to print more. Can we do that?
We could. But then you're going to be taking a wheelbarrow full of money down to the grocery store to buy a loaf of bread.
Thought they tried that someplace.
Yeah.
Back
Weimar,
in World War. Yeah. What is that? The Weimar Republic or?
Yeah, the Weimar Republic.
Oh yeah, that one.
Yeah, when they had to use a wheelbarrow full of Weimar Deutschmarks to go ahead and buy a loaf of bread. The same thing is happening. Inflation, that's hyperinflation. Inflation occurs when you have a large pool of money competing for a very small pool of resources. Okay. So the money is pumped out of the federal government and it's all competing for the same resources. That resource just really expensive because the people that hold that resource realize that, geez, I can charge more money for it. Or other circumstances, the cost of my producing that, because inflation has occurred across the supply chain and in wages, has gone so high, I have to charge X amount of dollars to cover my nut. And inflation happens, right? Now, here's the problem with unfunded pension liabilities. You have people that are counting on the fact that when they retire, everything's going to be happy. They're living on the promise. What happens someday when these pension holders and these pension accounts and pension funds go to their shareholders, the stakeholders, and say, geez, really sorry to tell you, we can't cover that debt and we can't pay you this month. Ouch. Ouch.
Well, it's a good thing that we are not a station here of conspiracy theorists. Because if we were, I would say the best way to solve that problem would be to reduce the number of people collecting pensions, like maybe by injecting them. Oh, I can't say that. Never mind. I'm sorry.
Oh. Huh. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to get censored for that one. Yeah. Yeah. What's the plan?
And run this in parallel track with the nominee who wants to cut off grazing rights on federal land. So in addition to not being able to buy a loaf of bread, you're not going to be able to buy a piece of steak either. Starting to get scary.
Hey man, they better not mess with my cow. Just saying. Yeah. It's all getting very strange. It's all getting very strange. I mean, when you look at the markets and how volatile they are, it's an indication of how bad things could be and how hyper inflated the value of the stock market is today. And I'm not sure it's real. I think that there's a lot of artificial propping up that's been done through whatever, and the Federal Reserve is talking about raising interest. Well, they're going to hold steady on the interest rates, but they're starting to throw flags in other areas where it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up.
Isn't that the truth?
I had a young man come into my office today that I work with. He says, "Hey, I just sold a house." And, he's just out of the service. He had a house in Virginia Beach and he sold it. He bought it well and he did well on it. And he owned the house for just under a year and he made $60,000 or something like that. Okay. And I'm like, he's like, "Well, I got to pay capital gains tax." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. Whatever. Cool. That's the rules. You got to pay the capital gains tax." I'm like, "What are you going to do with the rest of it? Are you going to invest it?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to go buy some cryptos." And I was like,
cryptos.
I'm like, "Can you eat a crypto?" He's like, "No, but you can buy food with a crypto." I'm like, "Can you? Can you hold a crypto in your hand?" He's like, "Well, those Bitcoin things are like real coins." I'm like, "They're real coins. They're what
like
are they made of?"
coins.
He says, Yeah, exactly. I'm like, "What are they made of?" He says, "They're like an ounce of real silver." So I'm like, "They're worth $26 each." He's like, "No, they're worth 30,000. And I said, "No, they're not."
Well, that's because he's clearly misinformed or uninformed. I mean, the next big thing is that I hear it is the Kalagna. So that'll be it'd be like 100,000 in real imaginary Bitcoin currency.
Yeah.
But this is the brainwashing at such high levels that takes place.
I agree. And I'm a little bit concerned about it. Listen, these people that have pensions out there, if there's any way that you can cash that puppy out, talk to a financial planner, talk to a financial advisor. That's what I might think about doing if there's a way to get in, get your money all at one time and get out of it and just manage your own fund. But geez, it really scares me. All of these villages and all of these cities are just running so deeply in the black right now, or in the red. It's ridiculous. So it's all getting. Do you ever look around you and the walls are starting to come in? And you're sitting there, you're like, it's fine. Everything's fine. Rome is burning, and I'm just going to sit here. Everything's fine. It's fine until it's not fine.
Yeah.
Where is not fine? Where does that part come?
Well, the problem is there's just too many people that have firearms. That's all I can say.
Just ask your buddy Cuomo. He'll tell you.
Just ask
anyhow,
Uncle Andy.
Uncle Andy. Yeah, he's got problems of his own, doesn't he? Well, he probably will never be consequenced for those things, but that's another story for another time. Hey, listen, everybody. Hey, Kilo, thanks a lot. Great job tonight. It's your first show, your first real show with us. Really appreciate you coming on and picking up the ball and running with it for Bravo. He's out there somewhere. Hope he's listening and doing well. But anyhow, we just want to tell everybody, think positive. We're Americans. We've been through a lot of things, as a country and as individuals, and somehow we always manage to survive. And, it's always darkest before the dawn. So, there's some hope out there. There's some things that are happening. It's not all doom and gloom, but it just seems that way. We're Americans after all, and we're tough. We're tough people. So let's just have a little bit of courage here. So anyhow, we'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor. Well, not really so much a sponsor, an affiliate, POF USA, POF-USA.com. Choice of the people that protect Andrew Cuomo, I'm sure, in AR-15s. But you can't have one if you live in New York because, reasons.
We have an epidemic here.
That's right. It's an epidemic. You can't have an AR-15 if you're a responsible person who have been vetted by many government agencies and deemed safe and sane by several states and federal government. So POF-USA.com, makers of the finest AR-15 style rifles anywhere in the world. And Mark's Guns LLC up in Minnesota. Look them up, marksgunsllc.com. Look them up on the internet. If you need anything, give them a holler and they'll get it ordered, get it on your way to your FFL for you. There is no such thing as internet sale of guns. There's always a federally licensed broker in the middle of the program to make sure your background is checked for any of those liberals out there that might be listening who are living under some delusion that you can buy a gun off the internet. You can pay for it, but it's got to get shipped to a dealer. And where you go through your background check and your paperwork, and then they go ahead and release it to you. So take that. Anyhow, and that's all we have for you for this evening. Don't forget to check us out on Rumble. Parler's pretty much a dead issue these days. It's turned into a real pain in the ass, so we don't really play with too much with Parler. Go check us out on your favorite podcast outlets, Audible, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, etc., Google Play Music, Apple Music, etc. We're out there. Signal 50 podcast coming at you. Again, thanks for joining us. Kilo, again, thank you so much for joining us this evening and picking up the ball.
Thanks for having me, Alpha. Stay safe and be well, my friend.
And come join us next Sunday night, 9:00 Eastern time for another episode of the Signal 50 podcast. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great week.